Hello, my name is Brant Hunt, and my channel is Discerning What is True. Today is the first day of January 2024, and we're reading this particular book here called The Egyptian Miracle by Rene Schwoller de Lubicz, who is an Egyptologist who actually went against the whole system. Um, when everybody basically writes books but haven't done the study and haven't done the really deep probing as this man has with his wife, who spent 15 years at the Temple of Lazar in Egypt. It tells you a little bit about the pursuit of truth here about this man. This man has written many books along with his wife, and this is one of the books here. It's called The Egyptian Miracle. I've already shared another book by him also in the recordings I've done here. And so this is an introduction to the wisdom of the temple, uh, the whole idea, the way the temple is built. You see, I did a book called The Temple of Man by him also. So the particular chapter I'm going to is what they call part 2 of this book. And the chapter is chapter 3 here. And we'll get into it here. And let's see, we can get this thing up the way I want it. So it's called the Anthropocosmos. Anthropocosmos. I said that easy. That's not so easy after all. In India, the tradition of the Vaspurian Madana, the plan of the temple based on cosmic man, is still alive. The cathedrals of the Christian Middle Ages held Christ on the cross as a model image for the edifice. In Egypt, we know at least one temple laid out according to the human figure, in this case, a figure representing a ritual jester, man as representative in the Temple of Lazar. However, is man being born and growing? And we believe that vestiges of similar temples are nowhere else to be found. So, by the tutelage of what I've been following, a gentleman named Phil Langdon, who is out of London, England, he is, when we talked a month ago, he made me aware that there actually are 76,000 pyramids on this planet. Again, I'll say that number again, there's 76,000 pyramids on this planet. There must be a reason why those pyramids were based or built, folks. And it's right, and most people are not even aware how many they are. Many of them are actually in jungles. Many of them are also in China, which basically are restricted. That is, meaning that the Chinese don't want you to know these things, so to speak. But most of them are actually in the eastern part of the world, and also some of them are actually what we call in South America. But they're all over the place, and basically, it means at one time man himself was not that lost as we are today, and people were able to find why they were here, and then they were able not only that to basically be a light as a feather. That is the what we call uh, the uh, the quote unquote judgment of the feather. That is, your heart must be light as a feather, and it's the Book of the Dead. There's also a book of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, but I'd like to read the other one they call the Tibet Book of Dead. In fact, Phil asked me, have I read it? I said, no, I have not. So, but anyway, I've kind of gotten off this tangent here, but what I'm trying to say here is critical. Why are there 76,000 pyramids on this planet? Why? Why is that? Obviously, men in the past became gods, meaning this simply is that they ascended and became gods. And that's what this whole idea, even in Egypt, was all about, to do with that ascension. Or another word simply is um, coming to the realization that you are God. You just haven't met him yet, which is inside your head. And this is not a belief system. This is reality, you see. So let's get into the, I'm kind of digressed it here, so let's get back to where I was at. Were this a mere architectural curiosity, a pious fantasy, or simply an attitude of respect towards the royal principle, it would be devoid of interest for us. Initiatory temple, initiatory temple, however, are founded on the principle of anthropocosmos, man as universe. That's the meaning of it. The thought of the deity is anthropomorphized either in its totality or in one of the cosmic functions innate in man, the ultimate product of nature. The intent is not only symbolization, but a basic doctrine for the entire thought process. Rationally, the tendency would be to study the particle component in the light of distinctive traits revealed by the totality, I should say. Common sense would direct the student's attention towards the partial component, or at least towards the observation of the part seen in itself, in order to be able later on to ascertain what comes to pass in the character of that part and it takes place in the composite or conglomerate in the new aggregate. The principle of Parousia, or Anthropocosmos, takes another position. Man is not the partial component, but the final product. He is not part of the all, but rather the all in its living expression. It is the universe, rather, which appears as the dispersion of parts, each one separately alive, and although independent, embodying an analysis with respect to the wholeness of the human being. The atom and matter can serve as an example. The natural tendency is to study the atom starting from what we know about matter and to gain a better understanding of matter by the study of the atom. There is a fallacy in this procedure. However, matter presents itself as a conglomerate in which the forces or energies of the atom are compensated. The characteristics of the live atom therefore cease to manifest themselves or else are modified. This is similar to the way colloidal particles, which in its live millennial form, the Brahman movement, are rendered inert through coagulation. Stellar systems, to the contrary, present an image of the atom in such systems, the matter of bodies in motion organizing into a living image, similar to the energetic elements of the atom. A nebula is more surely an image of the atom than matter can ever be. Such a nebula is a living whole, a symbol through which we can hope to gain knowledge concerning matter and the nature of the composition. Thus, the human being is a living whole in which atoms are as alive as he is himself. They form his material substance and his organic components, which in turn reveal and analyze all the functional aspects of the universe. You see, here's a definition of this a little bit on his footnotes here. The atom is neutral, being composed of an equal equality of positive protons and negative electrons. When it loses an electron, the atom becomes a positive ion. If on the contrary, there is a gain of one of the several electrons, the atom becomes a negative ion. On the other hand, there can occur a perturbance in the organization of the electrons due to a thermal shock. For instance, in that case, the electrons are displaced and the atom is said to be excited. The most recent theories, that is in 1963, indeed consider the atom as formed of a nucleus surrounded by a cloud of electrons in a constant movement. These electrons are distributed in layers of energy that play precisely the same role as Bohr orbits, BOHR orbits, ORBITS. So let's get back to the reading here. I just wanted to share that footnote with you. Anthropocosmos presents itself as a basic guiding doctrine for knowledge and as a rallying center for all aspects of thought. All philosophies, be they materialistic or spiritualistic, can relate to it. The fundamental tenets of this doctrine are: 1. The fact that the universe is necessarily limited by the characteristic specifications of the object and the being. 2. The fact that the variety of aspects and conduct of all that forms the universe is measured by consciousness. 3. The fact that there exists in one way or another, be it biological or mechanical, a evolution, a concatenation of the most simple to the most complex, and that humanity is at present a final effect, though not yet perfect. If in the becoming of nature thinking man is as such as we actually know him, we may accept the possibility of a continuation of this natural becoming towards a more perfect man, for there is no proof that the limit of this becoming has been reached. We cannot even guess at the state of future mankind having attained the limit of natural becoming. Each moment of becoming limits the universe to the consciousness of that moment. 4. Every effect resulting from impulse, as with the product of a seed, represents the co-production of the specificities virtually imminent in that impulse or in that seed. Again, that word seed is critical here. It's in the Bible, especially in the New Testament. We hear Jesus speak of it, and you hear it. You talk about the tree, the fruit. All these things are indicative of what's being said here, but it's not what people think it is, you see. Being the final effect, especially through religion and Christianity, being the final effect of nature becoming, the human being therefore represents the realization of the specificities immanent in the original cause, whatever that cause may be. Consciousness, the measure of the universe, appears in 3 essential aspects. 1, the specifically characterization or characterizing all substance and matter, determining affinities and repulsions. 2, the specificates functionality individualized into a coordinated organs. These 2 aspects represents a consciousness inborn in the forms that constitute the universe. 3, the inborn consciousness reflected by the cerebral organ, the cortex contained in the calvary, C-A-L-V-A-R-A, constitutes cerebral intelligence. Reason belongs to the nature of being, conscious of the 3 aspects of consciousness. In a way, the artist represents reason by his faculty and contemplating and understanding the work he has gestated through pure aesthetic sensitivity. In this context, being signified the virtuality of all possible specimens, consciousness without object. It is the metaphysics moment of the doctrine and the stumbling block, you see. Whether philosophers mentally accept or refuse this reason is no way changes either the fact or the usefulness of the doctrine of Anthropocosmos. There exists no function in the universe that is in the humanity, energetic, physiology, psychic, and mental forms cannot be observed and recognized by the human being. The key, however, is reason. This is why the Pharaonic sages and all the sages of this worldly world have attributed to every part of the human body to the vital organs and functions, a neater, a cosmic principle. Now, let me explain something. Here's a footnote here I want to go into. It's somewhat long here, but I think it's critical. He kind of tries to answer the question, which we are talking earlier by what he's saying here is by reason. I mean the prime and pure apperturization of complementation by the essential act of self-recognition. See the Heliobus mysteries. It is an anti-assimilation of the spirit that finally results in intellect through reflection and inversion of consciousness that is specifically human faculty. This places reason at the origin of the mental phenomenon, as the fiat lux, as general principle, is at the origin of nature. Recognition of oneself is dualization of unlimited consciousness, that is, giving up its cosmic character in favor of specificity, which, first of all, becomes intuition. The latter remains instinct as long as it cannot be oriented by intellect. Such orientation can lead to two results: knowledge through conscious mastery of direct apperception, or else a mental science through the reduction into objectivity of the vision while still at the intuitive stage. Reason is at the origin of the mental phenomenon. It constitutes the original pole of this phenomenon, whose definite antipole is the fusion or refusion into oneness of the inborn consciousness of the human being, the final natural form, with cosmic consciousness. That's a positive word. This is written over almost 100 years ago, folks, not quite. And it probably has been reprinted, so I can't say that. It might be in the 1960s he said here also. But the word has been mentioned so many times that you hear it now, cosmic consciousness. This was done many years ago, talked about, as though many people think this is a brand new word. It's not. Reason opposes fusion into oneness or unification between those two poles. Here is the natural Jehovan being. Christus unction can be considered the gift of royal irrationalization to the natural being. An image of this can be found in the fact that this disciplined suppression of the mental and cerebral process, meaning psychological consciousness, is able to induce fusion into oneness or communion. Now let's get back to what we're reading here in the book. That was just a footnote. In order to afford widespread access to this abstraction of unity called Anthropocosmos, the Gnostics and the great theosophists of our Middle Ages have presented it through the image of the microcosm. Next section is called the principle of microcosm. As an anthropocentric doctrine, the microcosm of esoteric science is intimately linked to geocentrism in astronomical. That's wrong. Astronomy, If the Earth is the center of the universe in motion, it governs that universe. If the sun is the center, then the Earth is but a planetary particle of celestial mechanics. In the latter case, the world is simply a physical phenomenon, obeying mechanical laws with the law of gravitation as their basics. This point of view has come under scrutiny in our day, approaching the atomic essence of materiality. We begin to ascertain at the heart of matter the forces of affinity, replacing the quantitative law of gravity. And we do know that Russell himself would actually argue against gravity in some ways too. He would go with what we call its electric universe. Well, I'm not getting into that right now. For us, the beholdens of the revolving heavens, the universe is clearly what we are ourselves, as it is mankind who is looking, studying, and passing judgment. We could hypothesize the existence of the same mankind stripped of the contingency imposed by a physical body, a kind of a superman or saint. Yet it is impossible to represent this without body or form. Mankind remains, in the eyes of present-day man, the apex of biological evolution, and there is no way we can deny or replace it with a higher concept unless we invest that concept with our own characteristic attributes. This is the basic argument for necessarily placing mankind, vitally speaking, at the center of the universe, prompting the esoteric concept of anthropocosmos and geocentric world systems. Under their conditions, the logic of this proposition must prevail. If in principle mankind is the apex and aim of the universe, this teleological concept demands that it be the summing up of all the elements and all the phases of the cosmic genesis. God created man in his image. The stellar universe then must be the essence of this man's vital form and functions, this man who is a final, formal, and present manifestation. This is an actual form existing in fact. It is not eternal. Its evolution is not definite, nor are its present possibilities absolute. The present form is transitory, but is virtuality. It represents all the possibilities of the absolute state expected when all that is mortal, that is variable, will have been vanquished. Christ in his passion, ec homo, ECCE, homo, HOMO. In this way, is Christ the very cosmos itself? It is not man as an individual who is involved, but man who is each and every human being affects the vital human principle. The doctrine of microcosm is the esoteric function of all religion and initiatory expression. It is a doctrine of the principles and functions of life, the abstract character of which is concretized into the functions of physiological um, economy, into the psychic functions of the emotional complex, into mental man's functions of intelligence. The doctrine proposes that this mental human being, through his senses, can establish a relation between an inborn knowledge as acquired in this life or brought back at birth, and the residue forms of the cosmic genesis of man, forms with which the world is provided. There exists in the universe an infinite number of sites where the heavenly bodies and their harmony have feathered the response of one self-same, non-material but energetic substance to a diversity of vibrations or influences. Through this resonance substance, that is, the possibility exists of a sensory relation of man with his millennial, diverse aspects of one self-same substance coagulating into celibate matter. This allows us through the mechanism of the senses to possess the intelligence of vision, of hearing, of smell, of taste, and of touch. The doctrine of microcosm does not occupy itself directly with these mechanisms, such as the mechanism of the ear or the eye. It lends importance to localizing the center that could furnish intelligent, comprehensive engine of these perceptions by means of particular coincidence between cosmic and actual events. The situation of these centers throughout the body of nerves and mind cannot be haphazardly between cosmic man, who includes the stellar world, and disincarnated human beings called microcosm. A harmonic relation must exist. The study of that harmony is the key to esotericism. There exists, therefore, a esoteric science as there exists in projections of the universe into the human body, the body of experiment, an atlas, so to speak, of the spatial situation of the cosmos. This is the science that has furnished to the sages of all times the knowledge of situating the Kakras, I guess is how it's pronounced, Cakras, study in Hindu yoga, as well as of the path to follow in the process of accelerated evolution. It is the science that has revealed, among others, the mystery of transformations and transmutations of matter, heredities of birth, and of passage to states beyond the material. In ancient Egypt, as well as in ancient China, the king incarnates the cosmos for his people and represents the incarnation of the present actuality, the present state of man's accomplishment. He is the Colossian. This is why ancient Egypt, the kings were given mystic names, and the dynasty evolved like the innumerable stages and the genesis of an empire, born on a date determined by the heavens. This date of birth is known, and by that fact, so is the becoming and the end of this genesis. Part 3, Toism and Heredity. Every human being is a whole. Everyone is for himself a totality of determinate qualities. Let the breath of the herald bestow the blazon that will be the ensign, the star to be followed, and the emerald shall dictate the conduct to be upheld. Totemism has been imperfectly understood. For that reason, the word totem leads to misunderstanding the esoteric meaning of its true significance. Western heredity, in its original esoteric connotation, is a totemism, Totemism, and esoteric science have heralded existence, being the pure symbolism of the particular qualities of individualities. Such are, for example, the tomb decorations of the pharaonic empire nobility. In chivalry, that is derived from Caballus, as it was known in the West, the man who distinguished himself among men received as a shield the plain table, quote, of one of the 7 colors having a symbolic planetary conformity to his nature. The salient facts or events characteristic of his personality were next inscribed onto this table. This blazon then became the ensign or symbol as of that man and of his descendants. He had to choose his emblem himself, as for example, Homa sone quidem mea yo pens. That is, for my intentions will always be pure. The human embryo goes through all the phases of animal genesis, and one phase or another leaves a deeper impression on the human being's animal type. All of nature is in the human being, and a kinship between a man and a particular aspect of nature brands him, specifying him as an individual among human beings. What marks him is not haphazard. It is not just any specification whatsoever. Various and diverse circumstances, corroborative such as physical heredity, for instance, the astral moment and the physical the physical millennial. These conditions then are necessarily those intimately related to him and favorable to his activity. Despite his free will, this person will always tend towards this particular eminence, this particular object, this particular aspect of life. To know this kinship is to know one's totem. It is knowing one's arms. The herald is the consciousness, the breath. The blazon is life. The arms are the symbols of one's own ambivalence and of the resources. The emblem dictates the chosen line of moral conduct. Nature, by which is here meant the corporate human being, epitomizes 4 elements and a coincidental: the organic trunk, the organic head, the organic reproductive apparatus, and the limbs pertaining to movement. The quintessence is thought, and through the senses there is communion between the corporate exterior and the incorporate interior. Analogically, earth, air, fire, and water, and arches the vital principles as quintessential. 3 principles direct existence: that which create the spirit, that which is created, the body, and its specificalities, that which joins the two, are consciousness. Hence, the 2 aspects, the 2 unequal parts, male spirit consciousness, female body consciousness, both resulting from the word, the internal action whence all proceeds, the one and only. The word brings forth into appearance, it is the weaving, that is the net. One becomes 2. The word is the root of 2, that is the supernatural harmony. This root is also called heaven. The earth is 2. Male and female exist in every human individual. Harmony is the scale of phases in metabolite genesis, activity of the word. Earth is corporate man, nature, while incorporated man is heaven. They are one, man, which means they are life. There is a metabolism in man, and there is man's metabolism. Metabolism to decompose what is composed, to separate what is pure and recompose the pure. This amounts to sublimation, to the exaltation of quality, corporated bread and wine, the spiritual blood, finally becoming external life. Not external, becomes eternal life. Having been corporated, consciousness becomes nervous energy, then seed, thought, and undermine universe 11, which is also a word that's used in scripture too. Man's metabolism is metapsychosis. He has taken all forms. One surpasses all other. His personal lineage, inside of an ancestry lineage, the accident, so to speak. Being as the function of being form, the phenomenon that is the new first being, which is in turn as his functional brings forth then use second being. 7 times and 9, such as the scale which from the virtuality of the cause moves to the effect. It manifests the possibility that all immanent in the cause, although they may not necessarily be realized. These possibilities result in deviations that are accidents. The accidents bring forth the definition of types arrested within the genesis of a finality in perfection. In the progress towards absolute finality, multiple finalities make the stones, the plants, the animals, the colors, the quantities. The limit of perception makes possible the senses that informs us. What is informed is man's heaven. This information is without limits for all that precedes, that is, present man in his becoming. A world future appearance varied by sensory information inserted into limits is the progress and the finalities, which prohibits the existence of identities. Yesterday through today has given birth to tomorrow. No moment is identical with another, only outside of time, hence outside of serial succession, and only for consciousness can a certain type of being identify with a genetic type. The conditions and accidents that define this type are constant in the possibility of constant genesis. The being of cosmic man includes all types because it includes all possibilities. Virtual or realized, but actual man currently specified by a type evokes the conditions and accidents that have stamped him and that placed him into the rhythm of that particular type, thus constantly evoking the accidents that have determined it. This is the magical character of a particular totem heredity. Identity essentially identity is able to exist through and within gesture. The magic of bewitchment gains reason in this light. It is said that a wound can be treated as a distance by nursing the weapon still stained with quick blood. The weapon that caused the wound, that is magic of analogies. It is useless to search for explanations and reasoning outside ourselves. Materialistic reasons such as astro or psychic communications, which still allow a separation. The universe is man. Man is the universe. And if individualities are distinct one from the other, the universe lends them all a vital solidarity. Identification makes for magic and so-called miracles, and the human being has the faculty of identifying himself with anything whatsoever in the universe. The presence of the cerebral mind, that is, forms the obstacle. Psychological consciousness places a veil between the consciousness incarnate in man, that is, his inborn knowledge, and cosmic consciousness, to eliminate for a moment one's own thought process, to arrest the sensorial at certain of the eminent surroundings, that is, at oneness through fusion with living cosmic consciousness, and it is a drawing from the source of life. Yeah, this word I just want to put out. He puts it out in 3 spots. He says at oneness. The churches put it as atonement. You see, but what they're saying here is at one-ment or at oneness. The words is pulled out in 3 words instead of 1 word. You see. Anyway, gotten off on a tangent a little bit. In such a moment, there is an exaltation of faculties beyond the normal limits. In such a meditation, the knowledge of one's own inward must be sought. This is the reason why in almost all so-called primitive societies, a young man at puberty is compelled to reach a state of trance so that he may determine his totem. This image, or the image or object that is in the emerald of his personal line, in addition to the emerald of the tribe to which he belongs. His life will henceforth be adapted to the rhythm of his totem. He will know how to behave and will know friend from foe. In our Western world, the name given to the child, a name that refers to a principal or to a patron saint, must play this role in a more conscious way. A member of a religious order chooses a role model among the saints. it should be the main concern of parents to note the characteristics of tendencies and dispositions of their children so that they may, without imposition, guide them in their choice. Everyone must recognize himself, and this is a delicate problem. I'm sorry, is a delicate problem. There is no difficulty in choosing a stone, a plant, an animal towards which one is specifically attracted. But this is meaningless. It is a rational choice. It is a rational choice. A precious stone is often chosen, but who will choose pyrite or orchard? Who will choose the spider, the scorpion, the viper? And yet, it's not a matter of choosing among these things, but of recognizing a state of being. It has become extremely difficult for Western man to differentiate truth from falsehood. Thus, he overvalues the result of his work, although they contribute absolutely nothing to his reality, which is the expansion of his consciousness, the aim of his existence. He has forgotten that only the love he puts into his work, only the quest to live with the life of the material he fashions can amplify his quality as a human being. Totem heredity is a state of being and a phase of cosmic genesis, symbolized by this moment. That phase, that symbol, is represented by a mineral, a plant or animal, and is a higher level by an organ and a function. This specific animal depends on a vegetative line, which in turn is connected to a phase of the genesis of metals. The one is foundational to the becoming of the other. The individuality of a human being is the human finality of this type, which is marked as a particular way of this branch of the universal trunk of cosmic genesis. The animal need not become conscious of that moment of universal consciousness. It is the animal aspect of that moment, the reversal of a consciousness onto itself, a repetition of creation that is self in front of itself, end quote, is the human being very own. In this manner, he can behold himself, and like a servant spectator, he is able to ascertain the aspect of the being that he is in the midst of universal being. This schism of consciousness, which distinguishes good and evil, delimiting a fraction of time on the eternal thread of consciousness, is illusory appearance, yet it is through the illusion that cosmic consciousness expands and experiments with itself, recognizing itself in all its virtually imminent possibilities. This means that corporation of the consciousness of the one and only is nothing less than Genesis. From the mental to the human being, consciousness descends into matter through Genesis. Then at that moment, it reverses itself, turning back onto itself to make it return back to its source. But now as a conscious consciousness, that is, through the liberating genesis of quantitative exaltation. Cosmic man, quote, cosmic man falling to earth turns himself around facing heaven, end quote. Such is the theological theme of all initiatory temples. The totem hereditary particulars is no obstacle to this return. To the contrary, recognition of one's particularity is an exceptional means for accelerating this return. In fact, any particularity ceases to be one once it is universalized in its own character. It is not sufficient, then, merely to recognize the symbol of one lineage. Life must be adapted to it. It must become an attempt at living all its aspects throughout all of nature. Elsewhere, we spoke of the distinction to be made between symbol incarnation for the continuation of the species and the individualized reincarnation. Totem heredism concerns only individuality and its reincarnation. That is why it should be noted that this individuality will incarnate only in the social millennial and terrestrial site that conforms to the lineage and at the level of consciousness that is already attained. Hence, for example, it is a certain epoch of the individual life his hereditary totem of living close to nature could possibly have been the ego. One of the ego's qualities, one of the most typical functions, then becomes the individual symbol. The eye is generally could be chosen, for instance, or eagle rhapsody. If the eye is chosen, it might be an eye especially adept at distinguishing colors, or again, possessing a keen vision of contours and lines. Whatever the special tendency, it is a disposition that must become a conscious guide for the individual life. If it desires to go beyond itself, this individuality in our example must attempt to live all that is color, be it in the art or in nature, up to the point of experiencing the moment where Genesis is expressed in color through color. This example is not meant to be taken literally, only as a guide to thought. We are, in fact, concerned with vital dispositions and tendencies, not with exceptional faculties. The tomb of an Egyptian princess of the fifth dynasty offers an interesting example of totemism. The walls of her tomb are entirely decorated with painting representing all that pertains to the tongue, from the creative word to spoken language, and even to the hermetic symbols such as the hunter who lasses a hippopotamus by the tongue. Examples such as this of the universalization of the particulars are one of the great pharaonic lessons. The whole is always contained in the part. Each temple that is, each human individuality is a universe, not a universe seen from a particular angle, but seen as a phase of its genesis always situated in the overall genesis, such as might be the movement of the child in the fourth month of its gestation. Totem heritism is the symbol of one of those moments in the corporate becoming, that is, nature of consciousness in its possession for self-consciousness, in order finally to attain liberation from corporate contingencies. So that's the end of chapter 3. I think that's correct. Make sure. No, I don't think so. I think I'm wrong here. Yeah, it's a little bit further. Sorry. So continue on. This is section 4. Sorry. The motion of identical precludes separation while acknowledging two beings. This duality within unity, incomprehensible truth of Trinity, is the basis of all magic. We look upon this mystery with a reasoning eye, which is why it dominates us and escapes us. If we approach it through the back, it will, on the contrary, furnish us with the keys to magical science. Through the senses, the certitude of our reach grasps only the effect. It based on this effect, we draw quantitative conclusions as to the metaphysical cause. We make assumptions by transferring qualities from a lower level to a higher one. This is a logical error. Were the metaphysical cause of the same quality as the effect, the latter would still be a similar cause. It would, however, be able to be a cause only for consequence of his physical and no longer of a metaphysical nature. For a reversal to come about, the entire scale of concrete possibilities must be traversed up to the ultimate coagulation. Facts prove only one thing, but they prove incontrovertibly the necessity and certainty of a cause. Certain geological aspects, that is, certain plants, certain phenomena, among them the products of fermentation, certain races and animal species, certain temperaments, and vital dispositions among humans, should show a bond shared by these effects with a site on earth and with propitious times. These cosmic conditions could be explained by a God who knows the cosmos, yet we have the right and the duty of ascertaining them. Not even a blade of grass could exist without the prudence of the Trinity. This means that there is an identity that must preside over the vital phenomenon. We are unable to master the reason for this identity, but we can master the knowledge of the circumstances and the disposition to be met in order to afford occasion for its actions. This is a magical science, by the fact, furthermore, that we are addressing a power superior to us which we cannot grasp with our dualizing intelligence. We're concerned with a mystical science here, a science that makes a hidden power intervene, a power in which it is impossible not to believe. Man's pride is incomprehensible. All our science does is to defer to the future is ignorance concerning the physical knowledge of causes. It is known by now that nuclear bombardment with cosmic rays transforms nitrogen into certain carbon that plants on Earth reduce to simple charcoal. If this is an energetic effect on the atomic structure, what remains to be discovered is the becoming of nitrogen and preceding that, how the simplest of energy, a unknown Houdiansons, puts together the atomic complex called hydrogen. Science will manage to discover this, provided by the Tower of Babel does not crumble, and the Tower of Babel will not crumble if its physical foundations hold out. But in the words of an unnamed sage, no stone shall resist unless it be the triangular stone, the potence of Trinity. Every vital phenomenon, everything that lives, exists because of the fact of this identity. The anthropocosmic principle, aiming at identification, bids us search within ourselves for clues of characteristic moments. The human being within its organism, within his behavior, at the moment of vital identification and reacting in all directions, becomes the carrier of the revelation that allows us to observe to a certain psychological reality outside of ourselves. The sensory conditions offered to that instant by the nature of that phenomenal terrestrial or astronomical ambience. Traditional science is built up out of such identification and is allowing actions with knowledge of cause while foreseeing effects. This is the only true science. It is perfect and its character is magical, cosmic. Next section is 5, God and determinism. Knowledge is possible only if an invariant law commands the genesis of its finality implied in the virtuality of this original causal impulse. Logically speaking, this demands a determinist point of view. Vital logic has nothing in common with the schismo of arithmetic series. However, it is motivated through the constant interchange of an action that has been absorbed with a reaction or new activity. In other words, a constant double reversal. Thousands of possibilities exist for ramifications, and yet the progress towards the preconceived aims is not deflected. It is said, the Word was made flesh, end quote. The aim of the creative impulse is the ultimate forms, virtual immanent in that cosmic seed. All accidents, all ramifications that occur in that cosmic seed, all accidents, all ramifications that occur in the course of realization, issue from the Genesis proceeding towards its aim. All causes shall have their cause effects. But there must come a time when they reach exaltation. That is, exaltation. Exhaustion, I'm sorry. Determinism thus concentrates on causes that are voluntarily or involuntarily engendered. But cosmic determinism has nothing in common with will or possible prevention. Its name is will of God, end quote. A will devoid of all arbitrariness and no longer acting as a reaction on the creative impulses. The true God and our being are one. Any prayer addressed to God is addressed to our own being, but not to our ego, to our person, which is but a momentary form of being. Our existing being is a search of consciousness for itself. The ultimate finality of the search is consciousness liberated from the limits of formal contingencies. Many stages betoken this genesis, and they are virtually inside us, having reached stages higher than our actual stage, stages that are still only virtual in us. There are beings who find in those levels their fulcrum for a rapid with our yet restricted consciousness. These superior beings remain in personal contact with human beings, and an appeal, a prayer, or an offering can be addressed to them for modifications in the course of events concerning the ego. The masters, that is, quote, the saints, in quotes, are virtually within every human being, and it is to them that our prayers and true sacrifice can be directed. It is childish to search for powers outside of ourselves as if they were objects. Determinism affects only the actuality of the present moment, only that which is transient in form. It does not exist for what is indestructible. Prayer or sacrifice for our entirety, I should say, or another can therefore be addressed only to that possions which is intermediacy between the eternal and the actual, and whose vaster consciousness can guide us and inspire us through ourselves. God and the masters or saints are real if a evolution of consciousness exists. Our corporate form serves as a support to such expansion of being, a support that is concretization of the stage attained. No argument or intuition can affirm that present man is the definite stage of life. Let us leave aside the word God, so imperfectly understood. Let us leave even that God who is called eternal, and let us speak of the one and only into whom the natures, that is, the potencies and functions of nature dissolve and vanish. The one and only is, but it ceases for us when we contemplate the stages of consciousness in their sensory aspect, that is, nature. By itself, nature proceeds to a disappearance into its constituents, components, that is. It is the Osiris cycle, constant renewal after death in the waters of the Occident. By itself, nature is unable to go beyond itself, as its only renewal is in the natural cycle. Genesis can be arrested, but it is irreversible. With the inversion of consciousness, with consciousness of consciousness, which is a higher state of human development. And, sorry, I messed up here. All right, with human development, art can interview as a break in the natural cycle through the power of negation, which marks that reversal of consciousness. To deny appearance, to deny polarity, to deny faith in sensory reality, voluntarily to descend to the hells of destruction in order to resuscitate on the third day. Everything has been said to ears that do not hear. The path of inborn knowledge, which is the path of Anthropocosmos, easy for me to say, leads through a desert. One must dare to find this mystical desert. But whoever remains atheist in that desert will die of thirst. He will not have dared to reject, along with the devil, the God, who is his counterpart. He will not have been able to perceive the one who alone can unite what is separated, who alone can break the natural cycle of Ashtavarus. He will have been unable to find the Fugadadian member of Osiris nature, voluntarily dissected the hidden center in the absence of nature out of which the Herodian light can be born. Only that which by nature is discordant can be disassociated, but is not precisely the vital aim to homogenize the opposite. Isn't this return to oneness the original aim from the beginning? To disassociate the magnet North Pole from its South Pole would destroy the magnet, whose intangible but unquestionable reality is in loving magnet force. And he's talking about the one pole is the Earth is just like a battery, folks. It's a magnet on the North Pole, one being positive, and then the one on the South Pole being negative, if I remember that correctly. So, which would destroy the magnet, whose intangible but unquestionable reality in its loving magnet force. It is this life oneness which must be considered and seen without polarity, that such a proposition does not penetrate easily into the heads of contentious equationists, puffers, and reasoners. One must learn to join what stands in opposition so that the elements merge into the new unity, cease to exist separately, even when the human child, father and mother remain disjointed, the one coloring the physical aspect, the other the psychic or the mental. The bodily carrier of quality divides the latter into two antagonistic poles, whence the phenomenon. I was going to make a note here. He says here in a note, it says the terms magnet and love have the have the identical root in French. Interesting. So that is the end of this particular chapter, chapter 3. Quite a bit of information in this one here. And so that will be the conclusion of tonight's talk from the particular book here called The Egyptian Miracle. Introduction to the Wisdom of the Temple. I just want to continue to state this, as I've said this earlier, many times in these particular books by this gentleman. And his wife wrote books too. I think she wrote 3 or 4 of them. She was very smart too. She wasn't, she didn't just go, I mean, she was by his side, yes, but she was also capable of thinking on her own. And so we're going to end at this point, and I appreciate you being here. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you well again. And again, this was again from Rene Schwoller de Lubicz. Thank you. You have a good night. Take care.